Lord forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the vital speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the bay.
Executed murderer Willie Flip Williams may have affected his decision to escalate the confrontation to shooting someone.
His brother was never the same. Can't understand the concept of proportion, and if you, just because you have a dispute with someone doesn't mean you should be seeking out revenge.
FBI, open up!
There's not too many people in Youngstown, Ohio's 170-something year history, or probably the entire state of Ohio for that matter, whose name would go down in infamy or be more associated with the destruction that crack would bring to the small Midwest city the same exact way it had done to other cities than Willie Flip Williams. And on October 25th, 2005, at the age of 48, he would be the 18th person executed since the state of Ohio started performing them just several years earlier in 1999. Just about a decade prior, he would be arrested for a crime that, in my eyes, would almost guarantee you an execution in the state of Ohio, when on September the 2nd, 1991, in an act that would go on to be named the Labor Day Massacre, he would murder 4 people. I say it's a crime that almost guaranteed him the death penalty, even now, but especially then, when none of the 17 people sentenced to execution before him killed more than 2 people. So you do a quadruple when they giving seats at the chair for a double, that's one thing. But even if it wasn't the amount of bodies that got him such a severe sentence, it would definitely be the motive and the need to set the tone in one of Youngstown's most dangerous times ever.
Now, some that live in this area say that for the first time, they're leery about leaving their homes. The numbers so far in 1992 trail last year's record pace. To date, there have been 28 murders in the city, including this morning's, compared to 38 a year ago.
Bill Blanchard, one of just 4 homicide detectives in the early 1990s for the city, speaks here to Channel 33 News about the rising homicide trend in Youngstown.
Just like last year, everybody was saying, why are we having so many? We didn't have the answer. We didn't have the answer when they were slowed down, and now we don't have the answer when it's speeded up again.
Nothing like it has ever happened before in the city, and it will probably never happen again. A perfect storm in some neighborhoods of high poverty and unemployment, coupled with the introduction of crack cocaine, led to the deadliest time in Youngstown's history.
It seems like over a decade of poverty and joblessness and families that are broken up, it's easier to reach that level.
To understand violence and homicide in the city, the story of the 90s has to be told.
In a quote given to the Cincinnati Enquirer by William Blanchard, then a detective with the Youngstown Police Department, he would tell a reporter with the newspaper that he thought the top was where Flip Williams wanted to be, explaining that with Willie Williams's short stature, standing about 5 feet 6 inches, it made him aspire to be bigger, even saying that he looked up to and aspired to be just like some of the dons from Youngstown's underworld, in a time not too long after the mafia would tear the city up, battling for control over illegal rackets as part of a feud between the Cleveland and Pittsburgh mob factions. Detective Blanchard would say he wanted to be like Black Joey Naples, speaking about one-time capo for the Pittsburgh mob, Joseph Little Joey Naples, who the detective describes as one-time crime boss over the city of Youngstown. Detective Blanchard, as well as former Mahone County prosecutor Kenneth Bailey, would say how they both believed that Willie Flip Mitchell possibly murdered upwards of 10 people during the course of his criminal career, but has never been charged. That sounds like a hell of a statement to make and almost impossible to believe until you go through Willie Flip Mitchell's jacket, which is littered with arrests and convictions almost immediately from the time that he would reach adulthood. With his juvenile record being sealed, it's impossible to tell what he was like as an adolescent. But based on his adult criminal record that would start in January of 1976, it's hard to believe that he just started there, when in February of that year, at the age of 19, he would be charged with breaking and entering in Youngstown and be sentenced to 3 years. But just like a lot of the charges that will follow, he would be very lucky when he would only receive probation on the condition that he attended a rehabilitation center. The very next month, in February, he would be charged with assault. Now, I'm not sure if that would occur at the rehabilitation center. He would be sentenced to 10 days in jail, with the sentence suspended. Fast forward just a few months later, in July of 1976, he would be caught in a vehicle with a firearm and be charged with improper handling. He would take the rest of that year off and start promptly in February of 1977, when he would end up being charged with a bank robbery in Cleveland and end up being sentenced to 12 years at the age of 20. That charge will put him on ice for a little while, but just about 4 years later, towards the end of August 1981, he would face a slew of serious charges at the age of 24, when he would face kidnapping charges as well as aggravated murder. Now, y'all remember earlier when I say he was a little bit lucky? He would take both of those charges to trial and beat them, only to be charged with felonious assault just a few months later in December to end off the year of 1981. And just like a lot of the cases before, that one would disappear as it would be dismissed due to lack of prosecution. On the last day of July, the very next year, in July of 1982, he would face an identical felonious assault charge. Not quite sure the outcome of that case, but he would be charged with an aggravated robbery just 10 days after the felonious assault on August 9th, 1982. And you guessed it, that case would also be dismissed. Now, based on his history, I'm under the assumption that he had to lay low, because the next time you would hear about him would be several years later in February of 1986, where he would receive his third felonious assault charge, with each of the 3 charges occurring within the last 5-year time period. He would pretty much get off again, as that case shows no build by the grand jury. About 6 months later, in August of 1986, he would again be charged with assault at the age of 29, with that case also being dismissed. He would face a final felonious assault about a year later on the last day of May in 1988 at the age of 31. Now, who can guess the outcome of that case? Ding, 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 ding. You got it. Dismissed. And after all of that trouble in Ohio, it looks like Flip thought it would be a smart idea to relocate. But that would make no difference at all, as roughly about 3 months later, towards the end of August 1988, he would be arrested for possession of cocaine in Los Angeles. He wouldn't be so lucky that go around and would receive a 5-year sentence. He would be paroled just after 3, and after serving his time, he would have his sights set back home on Youngstown, specifically the Kimmelbrook housing project. And this is going to be the exact point where shit begins to get wicked.
Mass murderer Willie Flip Williams. He was executed by lethal injection in 2005. Williams killed 4 people in 1991, a killing that was called the Labor Day Massacre.
Flip would return to his hometown sometime shortly after his release from the state penitentiary in California in late April of 1991. After years of terrorizing Kimblebrook and essentially the entire city of Youngstown, as we would detail earlier, he found that things had changed since his departure. 3 years is a long time, and it has been at least that long since Flip had roamed the streets of Youngstown catching charges. But it would be upon his return that Flip would quickly discover that the once lucrative drug territory that he once controlled with an iron fist was now under the control of a trio of guys, Alfonda Madison, William Dent, and another individual by the name of Eric Howard. And in an effort to take back something that he believed was rightfully his, Flip would resort to the only thing that he knew, violence. And it would be then, according to court records, when Willie Flip Williams would mastermind one of the biggest massacres in not only Youngstown, but Ohio's history. On September 1st, 1991, along with the help of his 16-year-old girlfriend, Jessica Cherry, her brother, Dominique Cherry, as well as their cousin, a guy by the name of Broderick Boone, Flip would put a plan together to rob and eliminate the competition. A small level of planning would be done with the group getting things like walkie-talkies from Radio Shack, with the plan being to use Flip's underage girlfriend, Jessica, to lure everybody to Alfonda Madison's house under the pretense that she was interested in a huge drug deal. Flip and his accomplices would arrive at the house, where they would ambush the 23-year-old William Dent, the 21-year-old Alfonda Madison, as well as 21-year-old Eric Howard. But it would be during the planned ambush of the men when the group would be surprised with something that they hadn't planned for. A fourth man, a 23-year-old by the name of Theodore Wynn, who would find himself at the wrong place at the wrong time, making a 6-mile drive from nearby Coysville. He would be in town to visit Alfonda Madison, as well as Eric Howard. According to testimony provided by each one of his co-defendants, armed with a Uzi, they would explain how Flip would strangle and execute all 4 men. Not long after the murder, probably sensing the heat, Flip, his girl, her brother, and their cousin would flee to Pennsylvania sometime in the immediate aftermath of the massacre, with no reason stating why, but the obvious probably being money. The group would go on to return to Youngstown, Ohio, where they would part ways. Like I stated earlier, the group would do minimal planning, but when you're dealing with juveniles, I don't care how much you plan, there's still going to be some holes in it. And not long after the 4 of them would return to Youngstown, Flip's girlfriend Jessica, her brother Dominic, as well as their cousin Broderick, would be apprehended by authorities, where it was said that they would go on to provide crucial statements that would eventually lead to Willie Flip Williams' arrest, the first one. Now, I'm not quite sure if y'all remember when I said that if it wasn't the act that would have got him the death penalty, it would have been the motive. But if it wasn't the motive, it was definitely what he did after he was arrested. Now, just a few days after authorities would manage to lock him up, Willie Flip Williams would make a daring escape from his prison cell on October 15, 1991, and even being wanted for a quadruple murder and an escape from jail, he was still able to elude police for up to 3 months till January the 2nd, 1992, where at this point he was really just trying to pull off some shit from a movie. Now Flip, using the help of 2 other juvenile accomplices, they would somehow deceive their way into the Mahoning County Juvenile Justice Center, the same exact jail where all 3 of which would become his co-defendants was being housed at. Once inside of the juvenile detention center, Flip Williams would proceed to take the receptionist hostage, all while making demands to see his girlfriend as well as his other two co-defendants. After a short standoff and I'm sure negotiations, he would end up being rearrested and also reindicted on 12 counts of aggravated murder, 4 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of aggravated burglary. Prosecutors will come up with the conclusion that Flip's motive for breaking inside of the detention center was to knock off his co-defendants. Now, who knows if that was his exact plan or just something that prosecutors would use to get his co-defendants to flip, which each of them did, interim plea agreements going on to cooperate and provide even more crucial testimony against Willie Flip Williams. He would sit on Ohio's death row for nearly 15 years before he would be executed in 2005. Y'all make sure y'all hit the red bell and subscribe button right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. Y'all get in the comment box below. Y'all let me know what cities we need to go to, what stories we need to tell, what we missed, what we got wrong, all of that. Y'all definitely tap in with me directly. Instagram, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. Bulletproof love for Youngstown, for rolling out the red carpet. It's Shay's Popalot. Salute the almighty mob.
Now to a First News follow-up. Willie Flip Williams committed his infamous Labor Day Massacre on the east side of Youngstown 25 years ago. But for the people who lost loved ones, it feels like just yesterday. 27 First News reporter Amanda Smith talked with them today as they gathered to mark the anniversary.
It's been 25 years since Willie Flip Williams killed William Dent, Alfonda Madison, Eric Howard, and Theodore Wynn. It's been more than 10 since the one-time drug dealer was put to death for those crimes. But for the families of those he killed, they still remember the pain of loss like it was yesterday.
We talk about them, about old times, have little family meetings, get-togethers, try to keep his name alive.
Yeah, Jason got it.
Even though the murderer was put to death, the families are still left behind to grieve. So they gathered today at the house where those murders took place. They created this memorial today with ribbons and balloons, and they think of their loved ones every day.
I don't have to do anything daily to think about him. He's just a part of me, a part of my heart, and that I look at his kids, his grandchildren, so that just, automatically just bring up my brother.
They also have a message of peace.
These young kids put guns in their hands, and you don't know the consequences, and you don't understand or you don't care what family member is going to get that call or have to go ID their loved one or their son or their daughter.
After praying at the memorial, the families went on to the cemetery to offer prayers there. On the east side, Amanda Smith, WKBN 27 First News.